lo.
Yinsian, Lagari, the Jimendo. Like the Lodon Jingi.
Nujing don't go there.
Yins, that is Lagari Jimendo.
Lagiri.
Like the Lodon Tribune. Tribune Tata make it. Tribune said, she Lagari Indo. What does the Natsumi Matone Tenin can you see what is? Or the Sulpan doing that is?
Migma Tuna, the Sonchana Pembache.
Kuzu Pembajevaina, and the Kuzu Leva in the Kuzule Pentu.
In Susu K. Shingre. The
Tangazu the Loja do Kuzu the Neba, then the shaken than the Yungu is over the Sulpan waters.
So the prayer that Rinpoche does by himself after the prayer of refuge in bodhicitta that we all do is basically a homage to the gods, nagas, and various other godlike deities. All those beings basically that we can't see. May this teaching be of benefit to those beings as well as ourselves. So the basic meaning of this prayer at the introduction of the teaching by the Lama or by Rinpoche is a homage to those deities, to those beings that we cannot see, and a wish to benefit them and a wish for them to be able to ascertain this teaching.
And then Hamasu Densal, then Susu Trapu Rag Nolu de, and the Puchalunzi Mumrai. And the Judul then against Ungol then doing waters, doing the Pedusha waters.
Just the Tambo got it.
Not so Pearl, they want about Ragnol, Pushazin Kabure.
The Ragnol.
Trapu Nolul, Sagnolul, Combazun.
Drapo cave, Millarepa. Ale, Drapo.
What then Nolul, but memorize the dead.
Su.
Tabaso.
Ale.
What the no do against Ungol didn't do it, and the Pusha doing the Jan Panger is one.
So also in Tibet, there was a place, a cave, where we'd go to memorize and recite various texts. And during this memorization and recitation, it was stated by our teacher that actual recitation would benefit the local beings and beings who were abiding in that area. So this was stated when there was memorization in the cave in Tibet taking place, and the actual recitation would be beneficial to other non-form-like beings or beings we can't see. So if the Buddha makes a pronouncement or states something, all beings understand it in their individual language. So if the Buddha makes a pronouncement, then the gods understand it in their individual language, and the humans and the other beings understand it in their individual languages. So the Buddha is making one statement, but this one statement encompasses all languages. So each being who has a different language is able to understand this one pronouncement by the Buddha.
Sonji ni de jena to mani de susuko sonji ni de jena to mani de susuko sonji sonji de an jima to ma sonba ina ya ganza ni ken de susuko no gres sonji ni de jena to mani de susuko mem ro ji ton ji ge sanji jo mo no ton shu na Let's sing you. Let's.
Another quality of the Buddha's pronouncements or speech is that he has the ability with the ability to utter one answer to answer all beings' questions. So if he were to be asked very different questions by various beings, simultaneously, his one answer would answer the questions of all of those beings simultaneously.
What that didn't mean also Landungi, that Landungi didn't go to Kazanga, that is long cut to Ballet Roa. And then Dunia may be Laton, and the Shanjuk Saint, and the Shanjuk Saint, when the Shanjuk Saint Jules, just one Shanjuk Saint Bachavar is, Marbe. Then Dunia maybe. And because she never had on do 돈이라 maybe 제네들 하동도 토소나 되는 рем베 안에 가서 그래. 줄란당. 안에 사줄어서 봐. 토네 사지 공주부터 그래서 아직 못 들리는 거 왔어.
So we're speaking of the stages of the path, and path relative to the wisdom section, or special insight that utilizes as its object of observation emptiness. And we've also spoken of trying to generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment, or bodhicitta. So if once one generates the mind that aspires to enlightenment, generates bodhicitta, then he or she becomes a bodhisattva on the introductory path of accumulation. And as he or she progresses through various stages and achieves the state of calm abiding and special insight, which utilizes as its object of observation, or as their objects of observation, emptiness, or the nature of reality, then one moves on to the path of preparation. So one can, through a series of steps, traverse these stages and eventually end up traversing the 10 bodhisattva grounds and achieving all of the realizations necessary in order to achieve the final aim, which is unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment, or Buddhahood.
다지단 랑세야 나수 모자가 랑가사라다 나두 랑가사라다 어떤 그 먼저사가 랑가사 어떤 두었 답은 가서 너유는 주바이나 안 너유는서 데 랑가들 너유는서가 랑가르스라고 하르스 어때 가르스를 랑가르스라고 하르스나 되는 로기나 너유를 해고 해서 안 너유는서가 랑가르스 들라고 두었 말베 아니 사자 가반드나 랑가도 사자들 해고 해서 되는 도사가 랑가르스라고 랑
So when we speak of path, for instance, what is the meaning of path? Path is similar to road, or a roadway too. For instance, if there is a roadway or a highway that goes to New York, then we would call this the road to New York. So if we want to go to New York, it's necessary for us to take this roadway to New York. If we wish to arrive in New York, it's necessary to take the roads which take one to New York. So here, road is something which brings one to a destination of some sort. So road to blank is road to whatever destination one wishes to arrive at, and those roads are what bring one to that destination, wherever we would wish to go. So this is a worldly path. This is a worldly road. This is the basic meaning of path or road in a worldly sense.
어제 다드는 가서 가서 그래. 령아기 디바 주 먹어 주다 거와 주 말베 먹어 주데 내 손으로 하글라레스 거와 주데 아니 하다물 하글라레스 어디 되시그레스
So if we look at the body, the speech, and the mind, and the 10 non-virtues, or the 10 virtues, which we can engage in relative to those 3 doors, we can see that the 10 virtuous actions allow us to achieve a rebirth into the higher realms of the gods and the humans and so forth. And the 10 non-virtuous actions bring us to a state of rebirth in the lower realms of the hell beings, hungry ghosts, and animals. So we see the connection of the 10 non-virtues and virtues to their fruition or fruit, or to the rebirth which they produce.
다제부 종의랑 종어도 도모이 랑세야다 네 전도다 건조선라 저순도 왔다 먹으주봉 추진다 디발라 샤당 아버제바이나 네 덴두이랑레스 어드제바이나 네 덴둘로그레스 덴둘로고여서 덴두이랑스 메기다바레스 제부 종의랑.
So if we look at the pathway to the higher realms, we'll see that if this is the sole aim, that these are the stages, falls into the category of the stages of the path shared in common with beings of a small capacity. So this aim to be able to eradicate the rebirth into the lower realms and achieve rebirth into the higher realms is a teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity. So how does one abandon the lower realms and achieve rebirth in the higher realms? He or she must have a very stable refuge. And a refuge in what? A refuge in the three jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha. He or she also must have the ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtues, or ethical behavior, which is an abandonment of the 10 non-virtues. And he or she must also have an understanding of cause and effect, and an understanding of how to confess or acknowledge one's downfalls. So it's necessary to have all of these things together, the restraint of behavior, the restraint of the 10 non-virtuous behaviors, coupled with refuge and acknowledgement of downfalls, these things together will allow one to be reborn into the higher realms. So these are the teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity.
다 주부 중어도 도모이 라라 되는 사담이 되는 두바이나 동해요 그래서 말해 제가 나치 동해라서 봐 아니 동해지 동해 주유 동해 차반 주지 동해라서 또 요아레스 대출레 타이 아니 그래서 그래 대답이 동해를 내가 주는 타발로야글랑 기본 딩글랑 테메글랑 테메도 도모이랑 어디서 근데도 도모라서 말해
So the next level, teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity, is as follows. A being who recognizes the downfalls of all 6 realms of cyclic existence. He or she recognizes that even in the gods and human realms, these realms are also plagued with suffering, plagued with the suffering of having to meet with the unpleasant and be separated from the pleasant, the suffering of change, the suffering of suffering, the pervasive compounded suffering. All of these realms in the higher realms are plagued with these various types of suffering. So then this practitioner recognizes the downfalls and wishes to definitely get out of cyclic existence altogether, or renounce cyclic existence altogether. Translators note, definitely get out is more literal for renunciation. So the desire to definitely get out, which then leads to various actions, which leads this being to a state of liberation or nirvana, freedom from the 6 realms of suffering, realms of cyclic existence. This ability to do so for oneself alone is the main characteristic of the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity.
다 동해 대바 군주 대바 근데 로아리도 동해 두걸 동해 대바레스 군주 대바 레주 군주도 녀모비 군주인데 아니 레던 녀모비 군주인데 코알 고약랑레스 말베 코알 고약랑 코알 고약랑데 레던 녀모바 레지 군주도 녀모비 군주인데 코알 고지글랑레스 말베
So when we look at the Four Noble Truths, for instance, the truth of suffering and the truth of origin, the truth of suffering is what pervades cyclic existence. So we see that the truth of suffering can be found in all 6 realms of cyclic existence. And the truth of origin, the origin of this actual suffering itself, is the karma, which is an origin, and afflictions, which are origin. So the origin of the actual suffering, first noble truth, are the karma and afflictions. So the pathway to cyclic existence, or the pathway to the 6 realms of cyclic existence, is utilization of the afflictions and actions, afflicted actions. So here, this is not an actual true path. This is nominally designated as path. But here we can say that in a nominally designated way, this is a path, a pathway to cyclic existence. So karma and afflictions lead one to cyclic existence. So we can call these origins pathways.
다 레다 녀모 오기 내는 코알 군 동에 요구여서 아니 코아 bombi 타바도 용하라 코아 bombi 타바 동에 bombi 타바도 용하라 되네 동해 봉지 랑 안에 라바 송고 거스 말베 라비 주진지 라바 딩아지 라바 시라지 라바 송고 거스.
So if one wishes to abandon cyclic existence and abandon the action and afflictions which lead to cyclic existence or lead to the cycle of cyclic existence and the 6 realms of suffering, cyclical suffering, one must engage in a practice of the 3 higher trainings. So the 3 higher trainings are the higher training in ethics, the higher training in concentration, and the higher training in wisdom. So these are called, for sake of brevity, I didn't say it on each one, but these are called the highest higher trainings. So highest higher can be attached to any of the 3 higher trainings. These are necessary in order to abandon the roots of cyclic existence.
어제 다그 돈이 두비 쉐라다 돈이 라메비 땡게제다 추진도서 아니 고아봉 간데스 고 달라테는 간데스 고아봉을 거 드베이나 데네 쿠이 자와데 덴질 토디오아르스 덴질도 로로시레스 데메 두비 쉐라데 로든든레스 데메 두비 돈이 두비 쉐라데게 데바지비 로로시들 녀비시고아르스 마르베 들는도아르스 돈이 두비 쉐라게 덴질 는도두 덴질게 좀 녀모바다 레다
So the wisdom realizing emptiness and the single-pointed concentration which utilizes as its object of observation emptiness serves as an opponent to the grasping at true existence, which is the causal factor or root of cyclic existence. So the root of cyclic existence is the grasping at true existence. So the wisdom which recognizes the lack of true establishment of phenomenon, the lack of true existence of these things, is an opponent to or the grasping at true establishment or the grasping at true existence. And this is then an opponent to the root of cyclic existence because the grasping at true establishment is the root of cyclic existence. So the action and afflictions that the root of cyclic existence, which is the grasping at true establishment, these actions and afflictions that they create can be abandoned through the wisdom which recognizes the lack of true establishment. So this wisdom is an opponent to and an antidote for the mistaken views of grasping at true establishment, which leads to cyclic existence.
But taba druidism lo yeres. And taba druidism lo just one of the drug sujagas and jiba chicken to a shaken to us. This she do ane taba the druidism do tene taba druma in by shibilo just one. Then ane taba druma in by shibilo tege taba druidism lo never know to us. Then taba druidism lo done jiba do no the double inside.
It's very similar to a mistaken view which allows one to believe that a rope in a dark room is a snake. And the various emotions which this mistaken view brings about are unnecessary. The fear of being bitten, the fear of being harmed by this snake is all caused by a mistaken view. Once this mistaken view is abandoned and the recognition of the rope as a rope takes place, then the fear and all of the emotions attached to this mistaken wrong view are then eradicated. So the wisdom which recognize, or the non-mistaken view which recognizes the rope as a rope and recognizes that it is not a snake, is the view which serves as an antidote to the fears and so forth, as an antidote to the wrong mistaken view which creates this mistaken emotion. This can be eradicated in the same way that the mistaken view that grasps at true establishment can be.
어제 다드네 추노 대바 주반제비 덴진 되차도 코는 유모바산다 어도서 걸로로시레스 등 가서 생게 Damaris, Sang Juris, Dolug Tabandamuris, Sang Rajinte, and then Tony to be Sherolas of Tuzuka Yosawa, the Sul Junior Maris, Tony to be Sherodan, and the Shambadan, Nijidan, or to say Abu Consona, and then Remember and Sang Junior Tenzin Dan, Numozuka Lake, Aletane, and Taban Raji, is this, Maribe?
So the attachments and afflictions and so forth, which are created by the mistaken view that grasps at phenomena as being truly established, are similar to stains in a cloth, which we might have. These mistaken views are similar to stains, but the stains can be washed away or can be eradicated. The topics that are non-mistaken views, such as the wisdom realizing emptiness and love and compassion, have the ability to wash away the faults of the mind in the same way that one can clean the faults of a stain in a cloth. So this is possible, and the non-mistaken views serve as opponents to the mistaken views. So when one recognizes the lack of true establishment, has the wisdom realizing the lack of true establishment or lack of true existence of phenomena, as soon as one has that, then one is creating the opponents to attachment and afflictions, which cause cyclic existence.
What did I done? Since Tanji, Susu, when the Lojun Abajigina, sang it to Matane, Kasugre.
Cheek Jason.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Gunda.
Yeah.
So I forgot one small thing. So by washing away the faults of the mind and by washing away these negativities of attachment and afflictions, then one can achieve the state of liberation. Gunda.
What that Sinjin Kandaji in the Kangalo Sanji Riki Chauduaris, Saint Shadan Shambat and Hinju Tuni Gumbaina, and the Saint Jamata Yobate, Sinjin Gachiba, Sinjin Gasanji Ayore, Hada Me, Tenzon to Ayore, Tabatu Ayore, Kangachibaris.
Semchen Tanche, Dibashaba Dang,
What the
Sum Lapsum, Gare, Sum Lapsum.
And the
Sik Sum, Need Jason.
Ledan Yomobata, the Shadan. Niebo, Tony to be Shiro Gua.
Lesso.
And Najuka Sambata.
Lesso.
And Shambata Hijit and the Lojaina, and the Gangasanjia Yuare,
Lesso.
Gangalo Tabatua Yuare,
Lesso.
Gangalo Hadamita Yuare, yes, Marbe.
Lesso. All sentient beings possess what is called Buddha potential. All sentient beings have Buddha lineage or Buddha nature. All sentient beings have the potential to become a Buddha. So if any sentient being were to practice acknowledgement of his or her downfalls and the wisdom realizing emptiness, meditate on or familiarize his or her, if he or she familiarized his or herself with the wisdom realizing emptiness and engaged in these various activities which served as an antidote to the mistaken views, meditation on love and compassion and refuge and all of these things, then any sentient being, based on the independence upon those practices, has the ability to become a fully enlightened Buddha. Every sentient being has the ability to achieve the state of liberation for his or herself, for him or herself alone, or nirvana. Every sentient being has the ability to achieve a rebirth into the higher realms of the gods and humans and so forth, if they rely upon those various same practices. So the potential exists for every sentient being because every sentient being has Buddha potential.
Tanda nga tsu mei lo ten tsawa chibari, mei sen tu chungpo shiraris. Tanda nga tsu mei sen tu yubi kao de, an chi o tanda ki chun yang le tanda jeba ina shiraga nyoba chibu yunguris, bacha yabu jatu guris, taba tuba tanda ma yuna ya, jema tabal ruyagi, bacha yabu jatu guris, sanji yagu bacha yabu jatu guris, bacha yabu jaba ina, an jewa shiman nangso, an kwe yari yandu guris, marbe.
So at this moment we possess this human basis which has so much potential, and we have the ability to gather up a large amount of meritorious imprints within our continuum because we have this human basis, which has the human mind, which is so intelligent and has so many abilities. So we have the ability to put these imprints or place these imprints within our continuum. So in the future, when we are achieve our rebirth, higher rebirth, then we will be able to meet with the conditions to achieve the state of Buddhahood. We will be able to achieve the state of liberation because of these imprints or connections that we make to these fruits. So liberation and Buddhahood will come to us by utilizing this human basis that we possess at this very moment. So each of us has the ability at this moment, because we possess the human basis, to create the factors which will eventually ripen into Buddhahood, liberation, and so forth in our future lives.
당가서 매일 찾아봐 매일은 상담을 하면 도와서 같이 취재할 가보 같이 취재할 가보 매봐 같이 량 샴바 공부를 가보 담을 하면 도와서 같이 셔러 장보 같이 셔러 진세 같이 셔러 조보 아니 셔러를 찾아봐 이내 런디 타송 hinjil 잡아자지마 이내 런디 타송 생군 담을 하면 도와서 코청하마 바차 장에 레버리스 말베.
So we could see that all human beings have different affinities. Human beings, some have connections to or affinities for religion. Some beings like things such as love. Other beings have a great amount of wisdom. Then there's some people who have kind of a medium amount of wisdom, and then there's others who are quite dull-witted, aren't so wise, have a very small amount of wisdom. So where do these qualities of the human mind come from? Why are there so many different qualities? These are created by previous lives' affinities. So this is the reason why each person has different affinities, because in previous lives, he or she engaged in different things and created different affinities for certain things in this life.
Then 가서 신전 손대지나 도와도그래 동행도고 말해서 말해. 동해 만들어 있나요? 아니 동해 연구도 와서 가서 동해 연구요 하래. 아니 도와도봐 있나 상상 도와 많이 봐. 어떻게 더도도 그걸로 간다서 연구버스나 아니 정말래 거와다 디바사 아자비 바차드 센도 내려 하래서 고진단 태원도 안 상상 동해 연구 하래. 상상 도와 연구 하래서 말해.
So we can see that although we wish to always have happiness, this just isn't the case. Sometimes we have to have suffering. And why is this? When we want to be happy, we suffer. What causes this to happen? Because we don't want it to. What causes it? This is caused by misdeeds we engaged in our previous life. Just the same way that the happiness or pleasant feelings that we have are caused by virtuous actions we engaged in our previous lives. So if we are curious as to how we are experiencing suffering and how we are experiencing happiness, then we will be able to find out that these are caused by actions of virtue or actions of non-virtue in our previous lives. Virtue causing happiness, non-virtue causing suffering. It's similar to this, no?
그래서 그래. 돈이 두비 싫어데 라니 집이 제도 나주고 상바 여바지. 안 돈이 두비 싫어데 라니 집이 제도 공부이나 아니 니 퇴글랑다 라제글랑 거는 그래서 말베. 니 퇴글랑 나요래. 라제글랑 나요래. 니 퇴 초랑 조랑 동랑 고랑 물로랑. 라제 초랑 조랑 동랑 고랑 물로랑. 말베. 야.
So the wisdom, if one desires to achieve the wisdom realizing emptiness and wishes to definitely get out of cyclic existence for his or herself alone, then there are two types of causal vehicles, each having 5 paths. The first being the hearer's vehicle, and the second being the solitary realizer's vehicle. So these 2 vehicles being in the category of lesser vehicle, each have 5 paths, 5 lesser vehicle paths. So if the aim is to achieve the abandonment of cyclic existence for oneself alone, then there are 2 pathways to that goal, with 5 paths within each of those 2. Gets cool.
Okay. Yeah.
So those 5 paths are the hearer's path of accumulation, preparation. I sometimes forget that everyone doesn't understand Tibetan, so I just have to. I just missed one part. So the 5 paths are the 5 hearers' paths of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning, and the solitary realizer's paths of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning. So these are the names of the 5 paths according to the hearer's vehicle and according to the solitary realizer's vehicle. Each of them are named the same, just distinguishing qualities are of the vehicles themselves.
So
these days we see Buddhism in Thailand, and that falls into this category. So the Buddhism in Thailand is the Hinayanist or lesser vehicle Buddhism. So the pathways are either the hearer's vehicle or the solitary realizer vehicle.
Sri Lanka and Burma
Sri Lanka and Burma also, I believe, as well.
China and Korea and Japan
So China, Korea, and Japan do have great vehicle teachings. It is not. It is this way. No, you know the Rinpoche gave some council de segre the Thich Nhat Hanh Vietnam and Lama the Thailand Kashi yure and Kon K Te Chempa K Langudu.
What do you say? Bedna nabi chue jai nabi chue rejas Japan da Korea da jai nabi chue Korea da Japan da ane what doesn't tell you that.
So I was just asking Rinpoche about the Vietnamese tradition. There's also in Thailand of Thich Nhat Hanh is a Mahayanist tradition, and he said that there is the influence in Vietnam because of the Chinese lineage there. Yes, there are Mahayanists in the Vietnamese tradition because of the Chinese tradition. There is Mahayana, and that's where their lineage of Vietnamese Buddhism comes from.
Tanya Tudan Raja, Moja Numu Jibaris, Numu Bade, Moja in Batibaris, Netuga Numubun Tabanure, Rajega Numubun Tabanura Jibaris, Rani Jibi Chido, Tabatua, Odanisanda was.
So the hearers and solitary realizers both eradicate or abandon the same exact affliction. So hearers and solitary realizers' aim is the abandonment of the same exact things. So there is no difference in the abandonments of these 2 vehicles.
Waje datane time dusogi nyomo pontu gors marbe nyomo bata le du pontu gor ineya nyomo bi bacha shiri bacha pontu maris shiri pontu maris shiri bon matu ba yinza saje rego maris taji chemba rego maris marbe.
So the Hinayanist or the lesser vehicle practitioner does have the ability to eradicate the afflictive obstructions, the afflictions. But he or she cannot eradicate the obstructions to omniscience. And because these obstructions to omniscience are not eradicated, it's not possible to achieve the state of all-knowing. So it's not possible to achieve Buddhahood, which is characterized by the state of all-knowing, because the eradication of the obstructions to omniscience is not possible in the lesser vehicle. Only the eradication of the afflictive obstructions, which will lead one to liberation, is possible. But the all-knowing state of a Buddha is not possible in the lesser vehicle lineage.
다 대바 전부터게 네 시디 바샤 모야게 아네 테멜 매비 안 대바 집을 위해 가르요라서나 상주그 센딩사르서 말이야.
So what are the great qualities of this great vehicle that allow for the eradication of the obstructions to omniscience? This factor which allows for the abandonment of this extra imprint is the extra quality is the mind that aspires to enlightenment or bodhicitta. So the bodhicitta is what allows for the abandonment of the obstructions to omniscience as well as the afflictive obstructions.
와지 다 상주그 센제 단제거든 소지고 무투바 샤오 냐베 와드 상로데 안네 상주 센스고 사르스 안네 데 안네 상주 센데 레베인두 안네 쿠텔 조조단 레보 상주 센데 두 준데 망아 두주고네 센지비추 와두레딘 사르
Lesson judre menga dun. Okay. Cheek lasen jakshin yambaje lamaso. Okay.
마시 텐텐텐소 와두슬라다
Tuchena. Okay, so how does one generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment or bodhicitta? And what is this? What is the clarifying factor that distinguishes it from other mental states? And it is that the one wishes to become a Buddha in order to bring all sentient beings to a state beyond suffering. So the desire of this being who has generated bodhicitta is to become enlightened for that purpose. If one wishes to achieve the state of Buddhahood, then one must traverse various paths. And in order to first achieve this mind which wishes to do so, one must engage in various practices. So if one wishes to have what is called the Mahayana mind generation, or a generation of the mind that aspires to enlightenment or bodhicitta, then one can rely upon a teaching called the 7-point cause and effect for achieving bodhicitta. This as 6 causal factors, recognizing all sentient beings as as our mothers, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, love through the force of attraction, great compassion, the extraordinary attitude, are the 6 causal factors, and the 7th is the effect, which is the mind that aspires to enlightenment or bodhicitta. So this is why it is called the 7-point cause and effect for achieving bodhicitta, because there are 6 causal factors and 1 result, which is the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So this is a method which will allow one to achieve or realize the mind that aspires to enlightenment.
What junde menga du so ngazu ko cha lel habusirares. Tishia lela buris.
Leso.
Yine kule yane the san momutang waris. San momutang gozaris. Yane the san momutang bayina and kale julje wajmendo. Julje kabu waris.
Leso.
Toni de damu koacha kabu waris. Toni de ne jemaya julje toni do bishera julje lela waris.
So, understanding the 7-point cause and effect, the words of the 7-point cause and effect for achieving bodhicitta may be quite easy, but to actually create the realization of these 6 causal factors and 1 result is very, very difficult. Whereas emptiness, for instance, is very difficult to understand cognitively or intellectually initially, but once one realizes it or understands it intellectually in an incontrovertible fashion, then realizing it is quite easy. But the actual bodhicitta is quite different than that, because bodhicitta, these words are quite easy to understand and the concepts intellectually are quite easy to understand, but to realize it is quite difficult. So one needs to again and again familiarize or meditate upon these concepts or these causal factors in order to induce realization, which is the difficult part.
What the nigga yane san tawa ina ko pacha chibuja yondule and the jemaya jenda so ondule la jul jongwa jin saris.
So if we meditate or familiarize ourselves with this again and again and again, then we will leave predispositions within our continuum, or we will leave imprints within our continuum. And then when the conditions and causes are present in our future lives, and we will immediately meet with these concepts again and understand them quite easily. So we should think about this very well.
타시니 디서 타드시러니 질 덴바니 요장 타드시러니 용고르스 타드 주시러 타드시러니 요드 레부 추고도 조고니 레용고르스 사제 용고르스 말베
덴바니
초초들어
하고스 덴바니 고
덴바니 요나 요장 안 타드시러니 용고르스
Goni.
그래서 아버스루
Hakosan.
What do you mean? What do you share?
So it is stated that if one has the two truths, conventional and ultimate truth, and then one has the two, method and wisdom, the wisdom realizing emptiness coupled with method, then one will achieve the result of the two bodies, the actual truth body and the form body, or the Dharmakaya and Robokaya. So the two bodies are caused by the two practices of method and wisdom in reliance upon the two truths of conventional and ultimate.
어제 깜파진 조디들 돈이 도 쉐러 준 거스 말이야.
Less.
근데 깜파진 조 무슨 내가 여자 신전 요하르스. 신전 여자 신전을 미미 현지 요하르 샴바 요하르 상주 생용 거스 말이야. 안에 돈단 내가 여자 돈이 도 쉐러 준 거스. 어드네 터도 쉐러니 용도스. 터도 쉐러니 여자 터도 쉐러니 그 데버들래 안에 최줄 거니 말이야.
So here we can see the connection here, conventional truth and ultimate truth to method and wisdom, because conventional truth, sentient beings are conventional truth, and the objects of observation for them of love and compassion and the wisdom and emptiness and so forth, all of these things are conventional truth. The actual lack of true establishment is ultimate truth, and this is wisdom. So here we see, by reliance upon the two truths and the two methods, so two truths being ultimate and conventional, ultimate truth being wisdom, which is the lack of true establishment of phenomena, and conventional truth, which is method, the conventional practices of love and compassion and bodhicitta and meditation and so forth, which will lead to the two bodies, which are the two bodies of the Buddha, the Dharmakaya and the Robokaya, or the truth body and the form body, or the Dharma body and the form body. So this is the connection of the two truths to the two practices to the two bodies.
어제 다 상주가 생도 줄 제소나 상주가 생도 줄 제소나 상주 생버레스 테바 쳔버레스.
So once one generates the mind that aspires to enlightenment in his or her continuum, then he or she becomes a bodhisattva.
어다 상주 생버다 너무 초랑버레스 초랑바 온디 온에 가이나 초랑 거수 돈이가 또 그래서 돈이라면 비시네 공고레스 말바.
So then once one generates the mind that aspires to enlightenment or bodhicitta, then he or she becomes a path, I don't know how you would say this, becomes a being on the path of accumulation. How would you, accumulationist? In Tibetan, it's the word. It's like a tsolampa. Tsolam is path of accumulation. Tsolampa is that person on it. So the indicate. The reason the Rinpoche is saying is that Tsolampa is a sentient being. So it's a sentient being on the path of accumulation. So in English, I'm wondering if there's a word we can make up, like accumulationist. Is that a word? Is that a person? Would that be a person on the path of accumulation, though? But wouldn't a being on the... Okay, anyway, I was just looking, because seriously, in Tibetan, there's a word.
Makes sense in Tibetan what you're saying.
Right. Like accumulationist.
To accumulate is a verb.
Right.
So to ist on the end makes it
An accumulationist.
Accumulator is
Accumulator.
Is a noun.
Okay.
Maybe.
Because as, you know, Tibetan Buddhism and English tradition develops, we have to come up with these words that we don't have yet. Accumulator. Okay, so anyway, a being on the path of accumulation, or an accumulator. Once one is on this, it means that he or she has achieved or generated the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And there are two types of accumulators. I think that that's a good word. I really do. I think it's a literal translation. There are two types of accumulators. There are those of beings of sharp mental faculties and those beings of dull mental faculties. And the accumulators of dull mental faculties are ones who still need to understand emptiness. So then he or she traverses a path to achieve the calm abiding and so forth, which utilizes as its object of observation emptiness, because the dull mental faculty bodhisattva, or dull mental faculty accumulator, has not previously realized emptiness.
So
once he or she achieves the state of special insight, which utilizes as its object of observation emptiness, then he or she goes to the path of preparation and becomes a preparationer. I'm not being funny, I'm really serious. These words need to be developed in the English tradition. Preparationist. Gangen sena de Tso Lampa, Ju Lampa, Inji Ke Mendu. Gangen sena de Kejor Lap, the Semchen, the Galat Solam. Inji Ke de Lagadu. Inji Ke Tsik Mendu. Then Tsik Gare. Jeffrey Hopkins, Tupten Jimba, Tsik Mendu. The Tsolampa, Tsik Mendu. Then Konso Lagadu, Kansak, the Tsolangi Kansak. Inji Ke Lagadu. Yene, the Buke, Kakare. Then a Triwa.
Solang Kadasan
Drabodu. Tsolang Kansak, Inji Ke Lagadu. Yene, Tsolampa, Tsolang Kansak, Buke, Kakare. Dun Chipadu, Drapodu. Tsolampa, Tsolang Kansak. Tsolam, Sheba. Tsolampa, Kansak.
Being.
Then Nge Triwa, Inji Ke, the Gariakshu, Gangen Sena, Tanda, Tsikmendu, Tanda.
So that Janju Saint Jules Cherva, Julan Male Baru de Lange, what the Tolamba.
So the accumulation is one. Rinpoche was just conveying the meaning, basically. And accumulation is one who is accumulating the necessary things to achieve the state of the next stage of preparation. So that's the meaning of the words. So we have a word for the name of the path. And path of accumulation is actually a consciousness. So accumulation that we're saying all the time, I'm translating, this is what Rinpoche said, is a consciousness. So when we say accumulator, which we've just come up with, this is a being. So the path of accumulation. So I said to Rinpoche, in English, we say all the time, a being on the path of accumulation. And he said, that is the same meaning, but it's not a literal translation at all. It's the same exact meaning. A being on the path of accumulation and an accumulator is the same meaning. But in Tibetan, they're two totally different words for those two things, even though they're the same meaning. See the issue here? Yeah. So I'm translating it the way other translators do and adding words in that aren't there. So it's not a literal translation. So I'm trying to see if we can make up a word so it can become one. Anyway, that's enough, but that's why we're doing this. Yapudu. Gangen sena the arela, the kejor, the yar, the tanda, tamche, tsik tamche, yomare. Lo chi, lo ju, lo ja. So once one achieves the state of special insight which utilizes as its object of observation emptiness, then he or she achieves the state of the path of preparation. So there are 4 levels of the path of preparation. There is the heat, peak, patience, and the last mundane state.
돈이 원송 두비 매대 돈이 원송 두 매통랑가서 되게 저나면도 줄랑려 가르진이 요아르선다 돈이는 매일 하통도 요아르서 대여송자 오케이 드레스 미기다 버렸어.
So the reason for the first nominal designation of heat in the first level of the path of preparation is as follows. If one is close to a fire, then one will feel a heat. Likewise, if one, the reason for this name is because one is very close to the direct perception of emptiness. So one is very close to achieving a direct prime cognition of the nature of reality or of emptiness. So one is feeling the warmth or heat of this. So one is very close to the fire. So the reason for this analogy is the fire here is emptiness, so the wisdom realizing emptiness. So the reason the first stage of the path of preparation is called heat is because one is getting close to the direct prime cognition of emptiness, which one achieves at the next stage, at the path of seeing.
어제 드레스고야 데 돈이 줄랑거서 돈이 세버시부 통과를 통랑거서 돈이 돈주다 만라와 줄랑거서 돈이 세버시부 통과를 대인소서 드레스야도 대인서 돈이 세와 취지다면다
The Yanjursuran on something about it. Yanjursuran on two channel.
다 취에서고 시바 마이미 취 대마만 루바
Lesso.
시바 마이미 취 대마만 루바 세비시부 통과를 저거서 저 세비시부 통과를 대콘단이란 나와 도바스 데네 저 점에 가서 안에 대콘단이 시바 마이미 대마만 루바데 세비시부 통과돼야 쳐봐도 파노 하이 클리시 어데 점을 말해 점을 저 점을 드르츠모로 저거서 안에 시바 마이미 취 대마마로 세비시부 통과를 초랑을 하바 초랑 거서 돈이 통할래 초랑 거서 돈이 통할래 연랑 거서 돈이 통할래 다 세고요 알았어 세비시부 통과를 저지 되는 세부 통화대 점이 거서 세부 통화대 델레 세워 놓고 하이세 어디 점이지 알아니라나
Then a Kansa Mayimbi Demo Madrupa.
Sheba Mayimbi.
Sheba Mayimbi. Okay,
lesson.
Okay, so when the difference between these various levels of the path of preparation is the clarity of emptiness which one cognizes with their relative to their his or her special insight. So, and when one is on the heat stage of the path of preparation, then he or she has a much clearer understanding of the wisdom that of the emptiness of non-consciousness phenomena. So phenomena which is not consciousness, and the emptiness of that phenomena is more clearly understood at the heat stage of the path of preparation than previously understood at the greatest level of the path of accumulation. So as one moves through these stages, the clarity of the object of observation or clarity of the emptiness and the emptiness of particular phenomena becomes clearer. So the heat level, which is the first level of the path of preparation, is a clearer understanding of the emptiness of non-consciousness phenomena, and then one moves to peak, which is then an even clearer understanding of the the lack of true establishment of non-consciousness phenomena. So this is a much clearer view, which is leading and is the highest view relative to these things, and thus it is called peak.
다양 sheba demba maruba. Sheba demba maruba maybe latunde ane 저 좀 zoba marba. Zoba gozo sheba demba maruba sebeji butungo azres. Choju gozo sheba demba maruba de seba tungo. Tang tuba cheba. What things are.
So then, when one moves to the next level, which is called patience, then one begins to have a clear understanding of the lack of true establishment of phenomena, which is consciousness. So consciousness phenomena. So so one has, just to recap, at the path of heat preparation, one has a somewhat clear understanding of the lack of true establishment of non-consciousness phenomena. Then one moves to peak. One has a much higher understanding, much more clear understanding of the lack of true establishment of non-consciousness phenomena. Then one moves on to the stage of patience. And at the stage of patience, one has a clear understanding of the lack of true establishment of phenomena, which is consciousness.
That's okay. Abadama Koshal Teoro. Zemutuba Zamachi, Zotung and Yomotons. Abadama Koshakos, what the Sunwaris. Jelon Zeba Tosona, the Nengason Rugomaris. Nansung Joe Gubi, Gubaji Toguris, then Goden Gonemaris. Nansung Joe Gubin Gubaji Yungres, Nansung Joe Gabi. The Dujig Gubaris, Dujig Goden. Goden Gonemaris.
Lesser, Dujig.
Matabin Goden.
Goden
ina taba imi chorowa. Ane zoba goso ngasung jiwa ngubin gubate dujiris, matabaris. Goden ina taba imi.
So I was asking Rinpoche a question while we were at break. I was asking if at the path of patience, at the path of preparation, in the liberation in the palm of your hand, Pabonko Rinpoche states that at that level, one achieves freedom from rebirth in the lower realms, once one achieves the patient stage of the path of preparation. But I've also heard other lamas state that this isn't accurate and that it is at the path of seeing where this takes place. So I asked Rinpoche, because we had a moment where we weren't taping. So this is basically an answer to that question. In the Abhidharma Kosha by Basu Bandhu, it does state that once one achieves the state of patience on the path of preparation, one has achieved a compound cessation relative to the rebirth in the lower realms. And here, a reason for this compound cessation or impermanent cessation is to clarify that it is not a true cessation. It is not an actual cessation. If it is cessation, it is necessarily permanent. And here, this is an impermanent cessation, so it's not a true cessation. Just a technical feature of the Abhidharma Kosha, and why it is called a compound cessation. But it does state that at the path of on the path of preparation, at the level of patience, there is a compound cessation that takes place relative to rebirth in the lower realms.
Oje taga julan je kozo taga julan du tonlan da kozo ponja karesna denzin da tambu ni ne tejen la do maju kares temel malang ho do maswa ina ane de ponja del denzin da nyomo ba du sures marbe denzin da nyomo ba le du ponja de kozo kwala rowa denzin la kunda da heji ni waris denzin kunda da heji ni denzin kunda sana karesna ane sensan ba du soge ane chuna demba dubares demba dubi jusen karesna
ane that's good gangisene de kabudu yene h kejo tugi yene kale
okay
gonda dan lenche yene tambo gare gonda lenche
denzin la kunda da heji ni
okay
nyomo la kunda da heji ni waris
that's so
panan de cha la kunda da heji ni waris de cha kunda heji de kande ja warisna panan ngason de cha je ba ina 안 잡아져서 유도 그 시다게 네 카도야 버래 안에 이디아부시라리 어떤 게 되네 주세 몸산다요
Leso.
주세 몸산다네 차바제용도
Leso.
어떤 되자 군다리스
Gunta. Okay.
되네 그 주세 마다네 주세 산 마단 되자 제야지도 어떤 되자 렌지스 그레스
Leso. Okay. So when we look at grasping at true establishment, and we look at afflictions, we can see that there are two types of afflictions. There are natural afflictions and there are artificial afflictions, or innate afflictions and artificial afflictions. So all of these things, other negativities, also have the natural state and the artificial state. So the difference between natural and artificial is as follows. When we look at attachment, for instance, an artificial attachment or an artificial affliction, which is attachment, would be when one cognizes an object, for instance, and then thinks a lot about this object, thinks about its shape, thinks about its color, thinks about the form, and so forth, and relies upon all of these reasons to muster up this attachment. This is an artificial attachment. This is an artificial affliction. But if one has a very natural attachment that just spontaneously arises without any sort of reason, without any sort of thinking process about the object of the attachment, then this is an innate or natural affliction. So this is the difference between the two. The artificial relies upon reasons for its engagement, and the natural does not rely upon reasons, does not rely upon analysis. So this is natural and artificial. Gunda and Lenche.
단 되자 루루시레스 되자가 산단데바 나징게 유디요 아마레스 코 트디요레스 루루시레스 루루시 임발라 안에 그 주센라 때네 잡아져야 지다 주센라 마된 잡아져야지 리니용거레스 말베 더나지 콘드 녀모바 이나 루시 미쳐레스 콘드 루시레스 이내야 그래서 콘드 루시 이나야 그래서 콘드들 주센 그래서 그다들 해지 이용거레스 But Kondo Lansa, you take the Santan, Jusen Santan, Quick Hamanga Yabajimasu, Doja Jison, Danda Kungal Doja Jigando, Sugo Kungal Doja Jigando Santana, Kondo Kunta Jimus, Marve. The next Jusen San Madonna Kondo Jajidua, or Kondo Lange is Marve.
Dene, Ducha Yena, Luta in Bichap, Gary
Lushi
Micha, Ducha Yena, Lushi Michap, Contro Yena,
Lushi
Micha. Okay, listen. So if it is attachment, or if it is anger or aversion, if it is affliction, it is necessarily wrong view, mistaken view, wrong consciousness. So all of these things, all of these mistaken views and so forth have two divisions of them, natural and artificial. For instance, if we look at anger or aversion or hatred, if one thinks about his or her object, if one thinks about the object of observation of his or her anger in an analytical way and thinks about, oh, previously this person hurt me and he or she did this and they're bad because of that and I don't like them because of this, and this anger develops, then this is an artificial affliction. This is an artificial arisal. But if one doesn't rely upon any reason whatsoever and is instantly angry for some reason, then this is an innate or a non-artificial, natural affliction. So this is the distinguishing factor between these two types of affliction, those that rely upon reason and those that don't have any reason.
That and Gudadan Hajin Yunguris, Demo Tenzin, Chuna Debadruba, Debadruba Yoris, Debadruba, and then you have Jusen Karasana, Tranjabasuke, Dali Jijere, and then Rajuba Meshik Jeli Jijere, then Jibubadege, Nikal Jijere, and then Jambe Jumel Jawa Yinta, Debadrubaris, Kusu Julukundan was.
Dran Chemba?
Tranjabage. Rajemba chuna deba drubaris. Deba drubi jusen karasana dali jejre. Kazin azu tajin to samar.
Dene Shen.
Dene Omar Rajuba menchi dege Omara juba mechi de chuna
Lhasa,
rangon juba
Shen.
de. Karasana jen le chiwa yimbe
Jen.
yeshir. Tene
Jain.
jebo ba jen rowa. Jen tradition. Wada ki chuna dewa
Then
de
Chitta.
nika le chiwa yimbe yeshir. Jambe ba so ki jume le chiwa yinsa demba juba des.
Okay, so when we look at ignorance, for instance, this is a grasping at true establishment that recognizes mistakenly that phenomena are truly established or inherently truly exist. And there are various negations which must take place which negate various philosophical schools. The negation of that things arise, things are truly established because of self, other, both, or neither. These are all eradicated. These mistaken views are negated because of the various philosophical schools that support them. The Samkhya tradition, or the enumerators, the ancient Hindu enumerators, Samkhya school, translator's note, which is most of the yoga traditions rely upon the Samkhya philosophical school. These days, that's where you can find the Samkhya tradition, believes that things are truly established because of self. This tradition negates the arisal or the true establishment based on arisal of self. The middle way autonomy school within the Buddhist tenet systems believe that things are truly established from other. So their arisal or their true establishment comes from something outside of itself. So this is negated. The Jain tradition, an ancient Indian tradition, who are also called the naked wanderers. The Jain tradition believe that there was a combination of both, arisal of self and other, to establish true establishment or true existence, and this is negated. And the nihilist believed in causelessness, neither being causeless. That's the translator's note. When it is arisen from one, other, both, or neither. Neither here refers to causeless. The nihilist believed in causelessness. So they believed in that arisal from neither. It is causeless, therefore this was the proof of true establishment, its causeless nature. So all of these things are negated because all of these things lead to the mistaken view which grasps at the true establishment of phenomena.
Oje da sanji go de songduas de cha she chewa ina ne maduba gongs
Less so.
kondu she chewa ina shamba gongs
Less so.
ane tamo she chewa ina tende gon doni gon go za da juan go so de gon go resman ba.
So the Buddha has stated that for the various afflictions there are those who have stronger affinities for each different kind. If one has a stronger problem with attachment, then it's very good to meditate on the ugliness of the body or the impurity of the body. If one has a greater problem with hatred or aversion, then meditation upon love is necessary. If one has a greater problem with ignorance or delusion, then meditation upon dependent origination, which leads one to the truth of the truest lack of true establishment of phenomena, serves as the opponent to the ignorance that grasps. So dependent origination is the familiarization which is beneficial for those with a diluted, stronger delusion or stronger ignorance. So these things were all given as antidotes by the Buddha to our negative thinking. Chik Jason, Chik ngay samba chik Jason.
Tamo ne dende gon za.
Tamche Lobsang.
Tando se des ro. Julan go so.
Then
okay.
So the part of the wisdom which is necessary we can find in here when we're talking of the path of preparation and the object of observation that we're speaking of in the path of preparation.
Ta julan go so nyomo gunta dan leje nyomo dan denje to so ngalo ane garso gore. Ta gun kala nga so mo to nyomo cha no to tenda she da me ba cha no go so nyodo na mo chi ro wa nyumudang denzin to so. Zawan pontu maris. Zawan pontu maris de ina ko shu chuchun shabaris.
Lenche dang gundak
Nika.
Nika. So when one is on the path of preparation, it is not to say that the natural and the artificial afflictions or the innate and contrived, these are all the different words they use, innate and contrived afflictions are completely eradicated once one achieves this state of preparation. It's almost as if they've lessened. Their power is like a flower that is wilted, like it is still there. It is not completely cleared away. There are still the remnants of those natural and artificial afflictions, but they've wilted. They aren't in the same vibrant capacity that they previously were.
Then the Tolan to the Tony Ngosung to Tony.
Just one question, Rinpoche, on the path of preparation, that individual has seen emptiness directly. Is that true?
Julampa Tony Dopishera Yoruba.
Yeah,
The Munson Sama
Tony Ngosung to be
share Yoruba. The
Teme what to swan yours. Teme Dajungacha, Tony Ngosung to Sara. The National Leva in the Tanda Tambin teaching laundry, Tony Ngosung to Maris. Tony to Hatung, Shene yours. Don't
share of Garriger, Yoruba, Kongichiwa.
Share Hatung Yodur, Hatung. Then Tony Ngosung got to some Tolan Len.
You know, the Musum Sama, then Julang Samagare.
Julan the Ngosung Sama Ilag
Jpag Sama.
Jebat Sama is Maroda.
That part of the, okay. So Rinpoche stated that no, at the path of preparation, one has not had a direct cognition or a direct prime cognition of emptiness. That happens on the path of seeing, which is the next path after the path of preparation. They do have the wisdom realizing emptiness because he or she has special insight which utilizes as its object of observation emptiness. But that special insight itself is not a direct prime cognition. It is not a direct perception. That does not happen until the next path, the path of seeing. But he or she has a wisdom realizing emptiness because he or she has a union of calm abiding and special insight, which utilizes as its object of observation emptiness.
Oje, that the Julan goes to the Julan and Tony Ngosung to Tolan Bashana, Tolan Barava. Tony Mengasu make Zotuan Nazi, Tony Ngosung Kadutonsuna, and Tolan Lenaris. And then Yomoba Quinta, and Denzin Quinta Golo, Pontogoris, Marbe.
Kunta, the Jutsen Ladene.
Jutsen Ladene, KB, Kondrutan, Denzin,
So once one becomes clearer and then eventually has a direct perception or a direct prime cognition of emptiness, at that point, then he or she moves from the path of preparation to the path of seeing. And at that point, when one has a direct perception of emptiness, then the artificial afflictions are eradicated. So the artificial or the coarse afflictions and negativities or negative emotions are then eradicated at the moment of coming out, at the moment of direct perception of emptiness. So this happens on the path of seeing, and the coarse artificial afflictions are then abandoned.
Oje, that the Lula Ganson Jag Lesu Gabondaris, the Cindy Gandulan Tadan Cabangers, Tonatoba Tite, Ganson to Jag Langabondaris.
So here is where we can say truly that the pathway to the lower realms is eradicated. So we can say that because of the abandonment of the path of seeing, that because of that abandonment, the pathway to the lower realms is closed.
That don't to the Satan Tuberis, then there's no the Tuba joys.
And then once one reaches the path of seeing, then he or she, I forgot one thing from before, I have to retranslate, he or she reaches the first bodhisattva ground. So once one achieves this, then he or she then becomes a bodhisattva. And one thing I forgot to translate from before is that the being who is just entering the Mahayana path initially without having previously gone through the Hinayana paths is the one who has not seen emptiness by the path of preparation. A being who has already gone through the Hinayana paths and has achieved the path of seeing according to the Hinayana paths, but isn't a Mahayanist, so must traverse the 5 Mahayana paths, that type of being has already had a direct perception of emptiness at the path of preparation. But a normal being, a normal bodhisattva who has not previously seen emptiness on the path of preparation does not see emptiness until the path of seeing. So that was one clarification that Rinpoche did make that I didn't translate. So I just wanted to make sure it was translated. So once one reaches this path of seeing, then he or she becomes a great vehicle superior or Arya. So when we say we go for refuge to the spiritual community, this is who we're speaking with. The Sangha, spiritual community, Injike, spiritual community, Sangha. So the spiritual community or Sangha are those beings who have achieved at least the path of seeing. So once one reaches this stage, then he or she becomes an object of refuge and becomes a spiritual community jewel or Sangha jewel. So the Bodhisattva superior then must traverse 10 Bodhisattva grounds. So the first Bodhisattva ground must be achieved. So through these grounds then one can the satambo nyomong. So as I said before, at the first bodhisattva ground, which is achieved at the path of seeing, then the artificial afflictions and the artificial grasping at true establishment is abandoned or eradicated. So the artificial meaning those relying upon reason. Those artificial afflictions and graspings are eradicated by the first bodhisattva ground. So there are 3, actually 9 levels, 3 small levels, 3 medium levels, and 3 great levels, which allow one to eradicate the innate or natural afflictions. Dutsu Yurube. So the I was just asking Rinpoche, maybe we'll look at the clock. Everyone's starting to maybe fade a bit. So we only have a small bit of time, so we're going to just go to the root text. Ngachungago 59, and then we will maybe do dedications and so forth, and maybe questions, a couple of them. So 59 in the root text states, having thus meditated on suchness, eventually after reaching heat and so forth, the very joyful and the others are attained, and before long the enlightened state of Buddhahood. This is Satambo Gawa. Rinpoche. Ale, Raptugawa.
Then Satamborado, Tolan to
Less
Grace.
so.
Then Sanyeba Sumba Jeba Naba Juba Dumba, Jeba Guba Jubala Suba,
Less
and
so.
then Jubutu Yungris, Sajakuman Jubutu Grace.
Less so.
What is one thing is a matter?
So here, having thus meditated on suchness, eventually after reaching heat and so forth, the very joyful and the others are attained, and before long the enlightened state of Buddhahood. In the Tibetan, as stated last week, it has more of a flavor. The having thus is more like having done all of this stuff that we've spoken of, having done all of these things is more of a literal kind of feeling. And so what are these things? So having gone through the various stages of the path shared in common with beings of small capacity, stages of the path shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and then stages of the path for beings of great capacity, moving from the path of accumulation, the 3 stages of the path of accumulation, to the 4 levels of the path of preparation, the 4 levels being heat, peak, patience, and last mundane state, to achieve the state, then to move on to the path of seeing. And one once achieves the path of seeing, then he or she is a first ground bodhisattva. And the first bodhisattva ground is called the very joyful. So the very joyful here refers to the first bodhisattva ground. Then he or she traverses all of the bodhisattva grounds, the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th bodhisattva ground, and then eventually achieves the state of Buddhahood. So one will be able to, in reliance upon the stages of the path in this fashion, quickly achieve the state of Buddhahood. So, and it says, and before long, Rinpoche stated that this means quickly. One will very rapidly achieve the state of Buddhahood in dependence upon these previous practices.
What the Badul that the Chunga Tomoya Jireba, Dino Tomoya Jireba, Chibi Chimbi Large Jireba, Kangatan Dushan.
So we can see that right in this 4 line in this stanza, all of the teachings are there. The stages of the path shared in common with beings of small capacity, shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and the great vehicle, or the teachings for beings of great capacity. All of these all of the teachings given are abbreviated in this one stanza.
So we can
see the abbreviation here because we know of the teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity, teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and teachings shared in common beings of great capacity, or the great scope. So maybe we've completed the perfection vehicle. So there's a little bit more to go over or explain according to this tradition, and then we've arrived at the tantric tradition. In the future, we'll go over and explain a little bit about tantra. In this center's hands, we all have, in English, the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. So in the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, in the end, there's a very small section on Tantra. It'd be beneficial if everybody would be able to read over that section, review that section on Tantra before the teaching. That way you'll be familiar with the concepts. Okay.
Jema wade yuenten jujuma dran shigins.
Okay.
Yuenten jujuma de jibuntin chung
Lesso,
de yoro.
Lesso, Beabudu.
Yeah.
Rinpoche was about to start a new teaching, and I said we probably don't have time. He was going to give an entire commentary on the foundation of all good qualities, the source of all my good, and how it relates to Atisha's lamp. So Rinpoche said he thinks that maybe we'll save that for another time. So he's going to, in the future, be giving a commentary on the source of all my good. And just for anyone who's not familiar, that's a text we read at every meditation session in the beginning of this red book. You could look it over. And it's a Lam Rim text, and it goes through the stages of the path in a similar way to Atisha's text. So in the future, we will be going over my commentary on this text we read every week.
That Jeremiah Landry, Geshe Lharampa.
So J. Rinpoche, Lama Tsongkhapa, wrote the commentary. All these is a commentary to the lamp for the path to enlightenment.
Then Larindiris.
And then this was the largest one, the great treatise, and then that then is the medium stages of the path to enlightenment. So the next level below the great stages is great treatise is the medium stages, which we don't have in English.
Then
And then the abbreviated stages of the path to enlightenment, which we do have in English. The Lamrim Dudun, which is the abbreviated stages of the path to enlightenment, we do have in English.
What the Madunal is?
So, and then the next is the source of all my good, the foundation of all good qualities.
What the new
very small, but it contains all of the stages of the path within it. So one thing, that's Guru Rinpoche, one thing I promised everyone I'd bring a quote from the abbreviation of the path that relates to Atisha's text. So I just want to read this stanza. States, Atisha's text makes it easy to understand how there is nothing incompatible in all Buddhist teachings, and makes every scriptural pronouncement, without exception, dawn on your mind as a personal guideline. It makes it easy to discover that what Buddha intended, and protects you as well from the abyss of the great mistake. Because of these four benefits, what discriminating person among the erudite masters of India and Tibet will not have his or her mind be completely taken by these stages of the path according to the three levels of motivation, the supreme instructions to which many fortunate ones have devoted themselves. So here are the four excellent qualities of Atisha's text that Rinpoche has quoted twice now, and I didn't have the quote, so I wanted to make sure that I had that today. The Nama Chiran, Launan Dudun, Temni Lung Lapsang, Yini Temni Nge Xingme, Nge Tering Kersong.
Okay.
So thank you very much. Let's do the dedications, and then the whatever folks would like to do, offerings. Could I have a red book? And again, we're going to go through this. We're going to go a little faster, and we will do it only in the Tibetan transliteration. Raji Muni Juji Medon Ram Ri Ra Lin Ji Ni De Nyen Badi Zan Ye Jin Du Mi Te Uai Drogu Nanda Ji La Ju Ba Jun Dang Yi Jin Ye Sam Ben Ge Wan Di Nen Dan Dro Agun La Ram Ben Da Je Ban Je Zun Do Zan Ra Ba Yi Den Den Nim Bu Nim Bu Se Je Yo Edam Guru Rana Mandala Gam Nirata Yami Nyambe Abawu Jitha Jen Pa Na Kuntu Sampo Deyan Deshin Ten Dida Kunji Jesu Dalo Che Gewa Dida Tanje Ratu Ngo Nuzun Jebe Jewa Tanje Ni Ngawa Gala Chutu Ngapade Dajen Give Tsawa Dikunjan Sompu Chuchiratu Ngawani Ngari Rawe Ngowe Jinyani Venande Wamalun Yongwene Chenrezig Tenzin Yanzoi Jabesidim Banu Tenyoni Lozun Samboyon Yenangala Yun Rinjamban Zimenge Weijin Lonan Dombenem Bazin Jema Khensur Rinpoche Lobsang Tenzin Danyo Zun Jun Du San Tarun Yin Geshe Gombo Yurin Jam Nin Yo. Yes.
In the Heart Sutra,
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about bodhisattvas today. Wanting to know